Good afternoon. This is Ada Bar Torah on Parshat Metzora and Sefer Vayikra, and also on Shabbat HaGadol, which is occurring the Shabbat. Shabbat HaGadol, incidentally, is usually the last Shabbat before Pesach, when we're all deep into the preparations for Pesach, both in terms of cleaning the house and other mitzvahs. And if Pesach should come out Motzei Shabbat, and in other words, Shabbat HaGadol will be literally a few hours before the Pesach beginning, then it's the week before. However, this year it is exactly, Shabbat HaGadol is exactly a week before Pesach, which is the norm. Now, why is it called Shabbat HaGadol? But by the way, we do not read a separate Parsha like we did for the 4 special Shabbats, beginning with Parshat Shkalim and ending with Parshat HaChodesh, which we did last week, but has a special Haftorah selection from the prophets, from the prophet Malachi, who is the last of the prophets. And this is a quote from the last verses of the end of the 3rd chapter, which is in the Malachi. So it is the final prophecy that is recorded, at least until at this time of Mashiach. Now, the Parsha is dealing, the Haftorah, is dealing with the events of what's going to happen at the end of days. And it says within there, and I quote, Hinei Anochi Eshalem Lachem Elav Navi Lifnei Vo Yom Adonai HaGadol V'Hanora. Lo, I will send Eliyahu the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. Shem is called HaGadol, which means the great one. Hashiv Lo Avot Al B'neihem Le Banim Al Avosam Pekah Vosam V'yitem Et Haaretz Charam, and that he may turn the hearts of the fathers back through the children, and the heart of the children back through the fathers, lest they come and smite the earth with utter destruction. But since we don't, when they wrote the various prophets down, they repeated the last, but we repeat the last pasuk. Or else send Elijah the prophet for the coming great and awesome day of the Lord. Hence, again, the meaning of HaGadol. And that's why it's called Shabbat HaGadol. However, there is a couple of questions here. If the command of the first mitzvah was on the 10th of Nisan, why don't we celebrate at that time every year, whether it comes on Shabbat or not? And one of the explanations that's given is the 10th of Nisan, which in this case will be in the middle of next week, also has a sad element attached to it, because 40 years later, Miriam Hanaviah, Miriam the prophetess, is going to pass away, and the well of water which followed, supply water the Jewish people for 40 years stopped. It was only after Moshe broke the rock that the water flowed again in his merit till they were ready to enter the land of Eretz Israel, where they'd have natural water supplies. So therefore, because it has an element of sadness, we keep it the Shabbat HaGadol instead. Now, what is the meaning of those verses that I just read? It's explaining that Eliyahu will come the day before Mashiach, the Messiah, the descendant of King David, will be coming to earth. At least he's been on earth, he's been born, he's a man by then, but it will be revealed to the world. And now Elihu himself, the prophet, some say he died, and some of the sources, and he will be reunited with his body. He's been in Gan Eden the whole time, next world, and he will be given a new body. According to others, he went to heaven alive, and he's existed there ever since. He's also been sent back to earth, supposed to attend the prisons. He also comes to the Pesach Seder. It's a tradition, and that Hashem sends him out, God, on certain missions. Now, when it says the sons should be changed through the fathers and the fathers through the sons, one explanation is that necessary reconciliation will be needed, that everybody will return to the belief in God and His Torah. A second explanation is the fathers and sons will be reunited, because the fathers will have to run to different places and separated from the children during the awesome days leading up to the coming of Mashiach ben David. A fourth explanation, as many, is that the children that will be reconciling with the fathers, that they will be shown what's coming, is because these are children who died, and during the Ki 8 and 19, the resurrection dead, which I'll discuss more in a minute, they will arrive at that. They will explain to their parents what it is like in the next world, since they've come back from there. And that will also bring the fathers back to the true faith. So when Hashem comes to judge the world, everybody will be, among the Jewish people, will be accepting God. Now, my next question is, where does the Ki 8 and 18 fit into the biggest plans? And before that even, what does this have possibly to do with Parshat Metzora? Seems very technical. However, if one reads near the beginning of the Parshat, they talk about the purification ceremony. And it says, the Kohen shall check him, and after he checks him, God commands Moshe. What they're going to do as follows is they are going to, the Sivan la Kohen lakach Yitaher Shtei Tziporim Hayot Taharot Ve'etz Ezraz Shnei Toalais Azev Tzivir Kohen Shekt Tzipor Achas Al Kli Cheres Al Mayim Chaim, and at Tzipor Chaya Yikak Ota at Eitz Raz et Shtei Tolos et Taaz Tia Tapal Atem et Tzipor Chayav B'dam Tzipor Shachta Al Hamayim Chaim. And translated, what that means is the Kohen shall command, and for the person being purified, there shall be taken 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, crimson thread, and hyssop. The Kohen shall command, and 1 bird shall be slaughtered into an earthenware vessel over spring water. Living waters is another interpretation. As for the live bird, he shall take with it cedar wood and a crimson thread and a hyssop. He shall dip them and the live bird into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the spring water. It then goes on to say, then he shall sprinkle 7 times the person being purified. From Saras, he shall purify them, and he shall set the live bird free upon the open field. It then goes on to describe other procedures before the person is forgiven. He has to bring sacrifices. But anyway, this sounds like a very technical section, and on the surface it is. However, on a deeper level, as explained by the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, there is, based on the Zohar, there is a different explanation here. Each one of those items has a meaning. And before I get to the Orach Chaim's explanation, on the birds, it's what is the cedar wood and the crimson thread? Well, cedar wood is a very magnificent tree. It can also symbolize, and it is meant to symbolize here, haughtiness. The crimson thread is from a lowly creature. It's showing that, in other words, the person who had saras is newly penitent, meaning forgiving, humbled. And similar to that, the hyssop's a very lowly plant. And it also gives the idea of humility. Now, the 2 birds here have different meanings. The bird that's slaughtered over living water, as the Orach Chaim explains, is Mashiach ben Yosef, and the living bird that is sent out into the field represents Mashiach ben David. And what will be going on then is David, the descendant, Mashiach ben David, will go out to do battle with the nations. It won't be a physical battle. Why? The physical battle will have already occurred. Mashiach ben Yosef, also known as Mashiach ben Ephraim, will be responsible for the ingathering of the Jewish people from all corners of the world. He will die in that process, possibly during the Battle of Gog and Magog. That is a battle when all of the nations will come against Israel and will be completely defeated. And the next stage will be, after that has happened, will be the Kiyat Mating, the resurrection of the dead, which also ties in very nicely with one of the explanations that gave why it's called Shabbat HaGadol. And the purification process is also symbolic of the concept that, in other words, only when the Jewish people newly humbled, and Eliyahu Hanavi is being helped to pave the way for that, and we truly believe in the greatness of God, will God's people survive the arrival of Mashiach ben David and the great and awesome day. And Mashiach ben David will then go out and battle with the nations, not physically, but again, on a spiritual level, and show that all their ideas are false. And the remainder of the nations will accept God's rule and recognize there is only one God. Now, and then, so what is the sequence? We have Mashiach ben Yosef, which is dealt with in Parshas Metzora. The next stage will be the resurrection of the dead, which is dealt with in this Haftorah of Malachi. And then the next stage after that will be the becoming of Mashiach ben David. There's obviously more to that, which I'll be discussing in the future share. In any event, and that is how the two parshas fit together. Now, the remaining question here is, what is the connection does this have with Pesach? Now, interestingly enough, if in the years when we have a Shabbat Chol HaMoed, a Shabbat during the middle of the Yom Tov for Pesach, we read a special selection from Sefer Yeheskel, and in it will talk about how Yeheskel will see all these dry bones, and he will help them be resurrected and become people again. And so Pesach is the time of that theme of resurrection. All the people who died prior to that, Hashem's nation. And then that theme, why should that be used as a Shabbat Chol HaMoed? Because one of the themes of Pesach is redemption. This is not only redemption of the liberation from Egypt, which continues on the seventh day of Pesach with Parshas Shelach, where the Egyptians are drowned in the Red Sea, the Yam Suf. But if one looks at the Parsha, Parsha and HaGadol, one will notice the following interesting thing is that Hallel, the special praise of Hashem that we say on special occasions, the three Yantos, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, as well as the rabbinical holiday of Hanukkah, we see something very interesting, unlike anywhere else. First of all, many people on Pesach night say it Hallel in the Beit Knesset. It's never done any other day of the year. Plus, interestingly enough, there is also an additional thing that the Hallel is split. When you cite Hallel, one chapter of Tehillim, Psalms after the other. Here it's split in the middle. After we read before the Seder, it's meal, the Shulchan Aruch. The last part of it, we recite after the meal. Now, why this dichotomy, the split, is because the first part of Hallel represents praise of God for liberating us from Egypt. The part after the meal is teaching us about, or is praise of Hashem, which has not yet happened, for the advent of Mashiach, the return of all the exiles, and which will be the end of days, and in which there'll be a whole new world order where everything will be prosperous. Everybody will be healed. As I said, there'll be revival of the dead. And if we can keep all these concepts as we're entering Pesach, may we merit the ultimate redemption very soon. Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos.